All right, I think we are ready. If you want to go ahead and call us to order.
Mike Bullitt.
Here.
William Beck. Colleen Lautenbach.
Here.
Allison Pitt. Here. Shelby Poole.
Here.
Greg Sand.
Here.
Carly Sherrill.
Here.
Jolene Squirtle.
Here.
Joe Valentine.
Here.
All right, Jolene, you want to read our mission and vision?
Yep, the mission of WLA is to utilize leadership-based programs and strategies grounded in solid research, combined with the demonstrated success of core knowledge curriculum as a basis of a rigorous overall educational program that builds strong skills in math, reading, literature, writing, music, science, and technology. The vision of WLA is to be a school where students and graduates become exceptional leaders and are prepared to take on the academic and leadership challenges they'll face in high school and beyond.
All right. Looking ahead at the consent agenda, is there anything that anyone would like removed? It's just our January meeting minutes and our personnel update. All right, then I make a motion to approve our February board meeting agenda.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Does anyone have conflict of interest to declare this evening? All right, we do have one public comment that was sent to us via email by Pam Van Moyen, something close to that. My request to be read. I am requesting a review of the WLA safety policies and implementation of a new policy clearly laying out what the school staff and administration will do if federal immigration officers arrive on the WLA campus and ask for entry, records, or detainment of students or teachers. It hasn't happened in Minnesota yet at a school, but has happened in Minnesota generally and in neighboring states. I have reviewed WLA's current policies, and there wasn't anything about immigration agents. I see lockdowns in case of school shootings, evacuation in case of fires, and shelter in place in case of tornadoes. But this is a new current threat to our children's, teachers, and administrators' mental and physical safety that should be clearly addressed in the WLA policies. I would love to know that WLA will be proactive instead of reactive. Thank you. And then she did send an additional email for clarification. She was looking specifically at policy 806. So I will assign that to Jonas. I know Jonas and I met and talked about it, and he has been communicating with staff and Pam, so I will leave that to him to continue to follow up on. And if there's any further concerns after he has done so, she will let us know.
Do we know if there's any other school that has such a policy?
As far as I know, and what I've looked at, it generally is handled within your processes and procedures, and maybe would make it into an family handbook.
Oh.
It might be an addition for a family handbook lecture. You certainly could make a policy. Generally the policies we have are ones that are required to have by law or implied required. And generally, they're coming off of model policies by the Minnesota School Board Association or the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools. At this point, none of those have come forward. There's not a model policy. And so we do want to be careful about doing policies that really haven't been vetted by lawyers and so on and so forth. I do like the school update I'm doing for families that should go up tomorrow. We'll talk about building safety in general and what our procedures are. The procedures we have in place already really address what's being sent by the Commissioner of Education, Attorney General, along with links to American Association of School Administrators. And generally our policies, we don't let anybody have access to our students or in our building unless we are required to by law. Right, and required to by law is child protection. A warrant signed by a judge. There's two types of warrants. There's what's called administrative warrants and warrants, they're judicial warrants signed by a judge. And then if there was just an emergency or a crime being committed, we'd have to allow officers in for safety. But other than that, we would need parent permission for anybody to contact students. We've reviewed our processes with the entire staff at our board meeting last week. If somebody were to approach at recess, we printed up what to do if a situation came up for our office staff. And I think we have all those pieces handled in those ways.
Is this person maybe concerned about after the students leave our care outside the building? No, they're just concerned about what's happening inside. Okay.
Yep.
Well, they know that that's what we control.
Right, we can't control what
She also
happens
expressed
outside.
concern
Right.
about like drive line and stuff like that. But there's not much we can do in
Yep.
that scenario. We can control that, we keep our kids safe in the building.
Yeah.
I also will note that we do have in policy 515 that we will not release student information or records unless we are legally required by a court-ordered subpoena. So like that is part of what we have in policy already.
Yep.
So bits and pieces here and there and everywhere that have us covered, I think, so.
But if any, I did meet with the parent this morning.
Okay.
If any of you have any concerns about this, feel free to contact me, email me, we can talk. And if enough board members think we should bring it to a policy level, we could bring it to governance. But my recommendation at this point is that I think we have everything we would put in a policy happening anyways. And if we don't need to put it in a policy to limit us, it probably, I don't think we want to make more policies than we need to.
Right.
Would be my recommendation.
I've worked at another school where this was more of a community threat for them.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if that school might have a policy, and I can talk to you more
Sure.
about that.
Sure. Take a look. But again, it doesn't, whether it's in board policy or not, the board policy would in all likelihood, just say to do what we already have in our procedures anyways.
Correct.
Right? Really, I don't think would change anything. But certainly something we could certainly explore.
Alright. Moving on, board reports, we did receive a 5-year renewal from VOA, that came in our email today, so that was a positive. That we have renewed our charter for the next 5 years. So that's really all I have for new board news. So I will turn it over to Jonas for our superintendent report. It came today, it was good news.
Yes, superintendent report. So, it was interesting, we completed the entire intent to return survey, and of our 884 students, parents told us we've got 100% response rate. 804 say yes, they're gonna return, 29 say no, and 51 said undecided. That would be a dramatically higher return rate than we've ever had before. In trying to determine how many students to accept in our lottery, we're trying to balance what we're seeing with the intent to return with what our historical projections have been, and there's a big gap. And so we are really trying to make some educated guesses. It's possible that our families are happier than they've ever been and they're gonna return at a higher rate. We know we've gotten a few records requests for families that said they can return already. So sometimes families say they're gonna return and change their mind or get new information. And so we're just really trying to balance that out. We do have, at this point, 459 new applications for next year. We offered positions to, about 389 of them, Cassidy? I think
Sounds right.
that's what's on our spreadsheet anyway.
Yeah.
And, so far we've had, I have it right here. 211 have returned, say they're planning to enroll for next year. At this point, we're getting about 1.5 new applications per day, every day, in the month of February. So to put it in perspective, we had 300 new students this year. But at the end of February last year, we had 158 or so having accepted spots. Right now, we have 211 with tomorrow coming. So everything's kind of staying at a pace about time and a half what it was last year across the board. Which, if our return rate's what it's been, we can't really accept more students than we accepted this year. We'll be, if we have 150 students not come back and we have 300 new students, we grow by 150, which is what's in our budget. But so we're really just trying to balance it, and it's really, really tricky because people change their mind, and trying to get it right so that we don't want to guess too high and have classes higher than our targets, but you don't want to guess too low, and then you've told people, no, you're on a waiting list, and they go somewhere else, and now you don't have, they don't come later. And so we're putting a lot of data together and making our best guesses, but I can't guarantee we're gonna hit the bullseye with it. You know, it could be a little under or a little over and have to adjust. But that's what we're doing. And so I feel good about the process. So I think the marketing's worked and the word of mouth has worked, and there's a lot of positives in terms of all of that. In terms of other kind of key pieces in the superintendent update, City of Woodbury came back out on February 13th to take a look at how Driveline's going with the adjustments we've made, and they feel comfortable that we've, addressed the concerns that they had for this year in terms of safety. We are in agreement with City of Woodbury that the changes we've made for now will not solve the problem with the 150 to 200 more students next year. And there's gonna have to be some significant changes to how we do things around transportation, and that will be a topic of the next newsletter in 2 weeks. And then I'll keep the board updated on where we're at and how we might need to adjust those processes related to Driveline and transportation and so on and so forth. Hopefully you've seen our new website is launched, and I have launched, like as I mentioned a couple times already, twice a month school updates to families coming from me to try and add to the communications piece. And so overall, there's a lot of positives going on right now, and feeling good as we're heading into spring break. I know it's right now is one of those few stretches a year where you go from winter break to spring break, and the closer you get to spring break, the more worn down everybody is, and we're ready for that break in a week and a half. But, overall, things are going well. Mike, you always have at least one question.
I'm
Speechless.
speechless,
All
yeah.
right.
Take it when I can get it.
You can put that down as a win too on your development
There
plan.
All right, Jolene, we'll let you take over with our finance report.
Sure. The summary of key financial indicators for finance report. Average daily membership overview, the original budget was 847, working budget is 882, the actual enrollment is 882. School's original budget surplus and general fund for the year is $233,463. The school is budgeted to spend $5,000 of the community service fund, a projected cumulative fund balance of $2,625,750, or 25% of the expenditures at fiscal year end. The school's working budget is projected a surplus of $217,877 at fiscal year end, which would result in an ending fund balance of $2,579,144, or 23% of total expenditures. The projected days of cash on hand is 63 days of annual expenditures. This is above 45 days, meets minimum bond covenants. The projected debt service coverage is estimated to be 1.23. Should the school bond in FY26, the required debt service coverage ratio will be required to be at least 1.2. If bonding is not completed during FY26, the debt service coverage ratio will need to be at least 1.10 to satisfy bond requirements. Financial statement key points. As of month end, 58.33% of the year is complete. Cash balance as of the reporting period is $1,823,737 and is down from $1,894,157 in the previous month due to regular processing transactions, as well as an increase in regular operating expenditures in this period. The revenues received at the end of the reporting period is 56.6% of the working budget. Expenditures dispersed at the end of the reporting period is 54.8% of the working budget. Other items, the FY25 original budget was approved at the May 2024 board meeting. The FY25 working budget is being reviewed by Creative Planning and Administration at WLA for appropriate revisions and adjustments based on enrollment and actual expenditures. The FY26 budget process has begun and will be presented to the Finance Committee and the Board of Directors. Following that summary, there are the colorful graphs that show all of those statements. And included in your board packet as well are these supplemental information regarding all finances. Any questions that I might entertain? Good, okay. None? So Finance Committee report, I actually did not attend the meeting. I was deep in the heart of archery practice and overlooked it. So Jonas, is there anything in particular you would like to review from the finance meeting?
I think some of it we're gonna talk about in
Yeah.
the FY26 budget discussion.
Right.
And I would just say, as best we can tell, things are tracking as we expect for this year.
Yeah.
Was about the extent of the conversation around this year, how things are tracking.
Mhm.
And things are looking, our enrollment's right where we have budgeted, and everything we can tell, the expenditures are tracking the way we expect. So barring something that we're not foreseeing at this point, we should be in good shape. Of course, I say that with, when you're in your first year going through the cycle, there's always things that you don't know that, who knows what might jump up that, I haven't been through the cycle here, but as far as we can tell, things are looking good. And Dustin feels the same way.
Sounds good. Just to note, we had our regular meeting. It was Wednesday, February 12th at 4:30. And something, I'm assuming you guys discussed the change in the meeting time from March 15th to March 19th to avoid the spring break. And then the meeting was adjourned around 5:15. Questions about the Finance Committee meeting? All right, in that case, I would like to make a motion to approve the December financials and the committee meeting minutes.
Second.
And there's been a motion and a second. Any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And we'll turn it over to Joe for our governance committee.
Yeah, governance committee met on Thursday, February 13th. We continued on the 400 series review, policies 401, 402, 406, which everybody concurred looked good, so no changes were recommended with those. One minor change to policy 514, going from school district to just school. Policy 806, it was suggested by Allison about looking at mental health protocol. So Nick Rice was gonna look at some other schools' policies to see if there's anything that's a fit for us and something maybe we need to add to that policy. So that'll be kind of a future discussion point when Nick comes back with that. We also discussed the wellness policy 533, and it was brought up. Nick's also going to look at some samples of other schools' policies, but maybe some limits with some of the energy drinks and some of those things, especially in the afternoon. I'm sure most teachers would appreciate that, so that's something we're going to look at in the future as well. Policy 540, with the PE uniforms, we moved that to future discussions because, well, we kind of had a lot to cover, and we're waiting for a little more info on that one too, I think. So, gifted and talented policy is another one coming. Minnesota statute requires us to have a gifted and talented policy, and we agreed we'd go with similar to Nova's gifted and talented policy, and outline that. So I think there's work on that with a draft, and then it'll be reviewed with the leadership team meeting. We also look at cheating policy, moved to future discussions, and then we added, which is part of the agenda item here for policy 538, which these were changes that Jonas made, which are according to the MD and VOA and the Minnesota statute as well for the enrollment policy. And then our next meeting will be continuing the 400 series review, annual policy reviews, the new student journalism policy, new library material policy, and same thing, actually this has got us at Thursday the 13th, but I think we did move it as well because of spring break, so I think we're going to meet on the 20th if I'm not mistaken, so. Did anybody have any questions or comments on governance? And I would entertain a motion to approve the February governance meeting minutes and enter policy 538 into the first reading.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to approve the February governance meeting minutes and put policy 538 into the first reading. Any further discussion around that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. I'll turn it over to Mike for our facility committee report.
Awesome, thank you. We met February 19th, which was a week and a day past our normally scheduled time. There was a conflict on the first one, and then you had a weather-related, I guess we used to call it snow days, but it was snowing a bit, but it was plenty cold. So we met at the 19th. Ben led us through a lot of detailed information, which I think we're going to see more of tonight about fit plans and some things that we're going to be able to do space-wise. So I'm going to beat the drum on that a little bit. We met for almost an hour from 4:30 to 5:21. That was most of what we did, was got into some really good detail about that. And so I think the board's going to be interested to see all of that stuff as it comes along a little later in the meeting today.
Thank you. Mr. Broderick is not here.
He'll be here for the closed session.
Whatever we call him, he's doing interviews.
So we'll skip over that.
Oh, it's my fault. So we don't need to do for that.
That's fine. We'll move to 7.2, the fiscal year budget discussion. Thanks.
And so this right now is under a discussion item with the idea we might tweak it a little bit in the next month, or if there's board feedback to consider before we approve the preliminary budget next month. But Dustin and I, spent quite a bit of time figuring out where we're at. Just kind of the starting point, our starting assumption is that where the budget is this year is about right? It appears that it's tracking to be where it's supposed to be. And then we factored in, from an enrollment standpoint, if we were completely full at our target in every class with the sections that we're planning to add, with what we set up, we would be at 1,070 students next year. And so but we're using 1,040 to be a little bit more conservative number, in case there's some places where we don't quite fill. Even though it looks like as far as we can tell, we're probably going to be able to fill it everywhere, but we're trying to use conservative in different places. And so we used it in that way. We were more conservative. Another way we were conservative is just that on the expenses side, we assumed that we were adding space and going to have to put furniture and do stuff in it, where if we don't add space, those expenses won't be as high. So we kind of figured on both sides, tried to use the worst case scenario in terms of bottom line financially for us. And then kind of figured out what we could do staffing wise from there, what we needed to do and could do. We prioritized having 4 more buses as a piece that we're covering through our growth. I'm going from 12 to 16, with the idea being that we should probably have had 2 more this year to keep the routes where we want them, and another 2 to based on the growth. And so that's what's factored in, and when the transportation budget goes up, you go from 12 to 16 buses is a pretty big jump.
What was, and you covered it a meeting or 2 ago, but what was the cost per bus if we do it the most economical way?
Right now it's about, right now let me say this. Monarch has given us a proposal that would increase our bus cost by $11 a route per day, which is really good. We had discussions that we were exploring doing some of our busing on our own, and they gave us a competitive enough thing where it was probably worth not doing that in terms of what they're offering. But it's about $65,000 a bus.
Okay.
So adding 4 buses is $270,000 260,000?
260, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So
And that
middle math
doesn't.
goes away in that.
Yeah, and then those other buses are, you know, if you figure $11 something per day times, you know, 170 days, you're talking a couple $1,000s a bus more next year than this year, but that's
That does
much,
sound
much,
bad.
much less than what it's been in terms of increases from all bus companies in recent years.
Was that competitive price that they gave us, like, is that gonna include changing how, like, right now, with the kids getting out, or picked up, dropped off right by their house?
That's up to
that
us.
Central location, or?
That's up to us.
Okay,
That won't change
so
the
that doesn't
cost.
affect our cost for us?
That determines how long the routes are gonna be.
Okay,
What we do there, right?
Okay.
And if we can really get them under an hour, or not to the extent we do that.
Sure.
And so there's gonna be some more coming about that in the coming weeks, and what we're thinking, I don't know that that's necessarily,
I didn't know if maybe they, like, oh, we could do it cheaper if we've got a more central and it's less stops for us, or something like that, so I guess.
not
but-
so much.
Okay.
It's gonna be more what we try and set to try and keep. A piece is gonna be,
Shorter, yeah.
a piece of it will be, we probably need to be not quite so accommodating to go right as close as we have.
Yeah,
Maybe still a little bit more accommodating than some of the local school districts that say up to 3 blocks away from their house,
right,
you know, in terms of balance. But I think the other places that we're really gonna need to do things different and really communicate, is we're really gonna need families to tell us before the end of the school year, before they go, are they on a bus next year, or are they drive line? And if they decide to add a bus later, we can only say, you can go to an existing stop on the route, we can't promise to get you closer, because we
Right.
really need to, that's really been a big piece of us not having routes be so long, is you make your routes, and then you start taking out and adding, and taking out and
Wrench into
adding.
the plan.
And the whole way things are routed initially, you would have done totally different if you had the information in the beginning, and you could have routed more efficiently. And so really, you know, not that we wouldn't, you know, not that you can't add the bus, but you'd have to ride an existing route, you know, it might be 3 blocks from your house or 4 blocks from your house in that situation.
Sure.
And that would be really inconvenient for that family, but if it's making the route to the kids that are on the bus for an hour and 10 minutes, under an hour, you know, that may be the greater good. And so,
sure.
Now that we're having sophomores next year, we might consider also talking about them driving to school. So we might need to include that on some of the registration forms, is
Good point.
will they need parking, and, you know, will they be driving other siblings to school?
oh, good point. Yes.
It
we
won't,
can-
it won't be the majority of the students, I'm sure,
No.
but sophomores now could have their driver's license.
And we will only have one class of that group.
Isn't that terrifying?
We'll only have one class of 24, and.
But all 24 could drive.
Right, yeah, but in all likelihood, I mean, most of them probably will not have their license or be 16 at the beginning of the year.
Right, right.
They turn gradually through the
Right,
year.
right.
And so, some work to be done there, but there's gonna be a lot of communication coming on that, and that's gonna be a kind of a major communication campaign with our families to really help them understand it's gonna be different. And don't just assume that what you've done in the past is gonna work if you're not paying attention to this, and really trying to get the message out. And there'll end up being some unhappy people with it, and we're just gonna have to remember that it's, for the majority of people, it's making life better by keeping the rides a reasonable length. And so it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be what we kinda need to do to make things work. And so more to come. But anyways, back to the budget. You'll see that the salaries, well, so basically, with what we're projecting for enrollment next year, our revenue is projected to increase from, where's the bottom line revenue here? Where's the bottom line revenue go? You making it help me here?
58.5 million, bottom of page 1 in the 25-26 column.
Yep, so projected revenue this year from all state aids is $10,169,000, and it's over $12 million next year. So it's almost a $2 million increase in revenue if we hit our enrollment targets. And that's assuming that state aid goes up 2%, which we suspect it might go up 3%, because the law is now tied to inflation, and every measure is that based on what inflation's been, we think it would go 3%, but It's a minimum of 2, so we're using that. That number is on the bottom of page 1, 2, 3, where if you go, it lays out like the last several years, and the third column is this year's revenue and state aids, and the fourth column is projected for next year, at the 12 billion. That's where that is. So of that $2 million increase, 900,000 or so is salaries, which I'll break down in a minute. A couple $100,000 is benefits, so that's 1.1. 300,000 is busing, so you're up to 1.4 of that money, and then most of the rest of it is kind of tied into being able to buy furniture and the things we need, and inflationary costs and the things we need for the new building. Of the 900,000 increase in salaries, about 2/3 of that is for new positions. So we're adding 15 positions, and the other third of that is for raises. Roughly, ballpark, in this first draft. And it all gets us to a bottom line that works out. So that's kind of the general way things are looking there. And I guess I'll leave it for questions. Maybe we don't need more than that at this point.
I have 2 questions.
Yes?
Grade 11 and grade 12, I still see 0, 0 for them for year 13, 14, and 15 at the top.
I think, well, honestly, the only part of this we worked on was the part for next year.
Okay.
So the parts, the years beyond that are kind of placeholders
Okay.
he has in there.
Sounds good.
We didn't really work to that or have that discussion, but the plan is to add, 10th grade next year, 11th
Yep.
the year after, and 12th the year after. That's about much I can tell you right now.
And you mentioned state aid might go up a little bit, but what about federal aid? Are you concerned about that moving around?
Not as far as I know.
Okay.
First of all, our federal aid, based on our relatively low free and
Yeah.
reduced lunch and relatively low EL population, is a pretty small amount.
Okay.
It's less than $200,000 of our $12 million budget. But my expectation would be that our revenues would increase there based on our increased enrollment, right? So it's basically the number of students you have that are on free and reduced lunch and the number of students you have, well, really free and reduced lunch in that one. And so that should go up based on the fact that this year we have a lot more students than last year. We have 15% more. But it does depend on what happens in the rest of the state. Like if the rest of the state gets allocated a certain amount of money, but then it also then gets allocated proportional to other school districts who have more poverty. If the economy is going bad, then others might get a bigger chunk of it, from a percentage standpoint. So it is really hard to predict that one exactly, but fortunately for us, it's relatively low amount. And generally, we get that number in April, May. Well, in previous years, it was like March or April.
Mhm.
Last year, it was way later for some reason, but generally, it's been March or April. So, yeah. What else? The enrollment increase is based on 8 additional sections. I probably should say that. Is that laid out in here? Kind of. There are some question marks that we're still tracking. We are going to have, and some pieces have moved here, but we are going to have at least 6 sections of kindergarten. In our preliminary working right now, that gets us to that 1,070 number. You would have 6 kindergarten, 6 first, and 6 second grade. But we're kind of on the edge whether might be easier to fill 7 kindergartens than 6 first grade. The way the numbers are playing, we have to see how things go between now and Monday. What makes more sense. And we'll make that decision early next week, because that will impact who we offer spots off the waiting list to. There is waiting lists at most grades at this point. And then, but in the draft we used, it was 6 kindergarten, 6 first, 6 second.
Mm-hmm.
Third grade would stay at 5 sections based on the number of students that applied and so on and so forth. Fourth grade would stay at 5 sections. Fifth grade will go to 6 sections. sixth grade will go from 4 to 5. Seventh grade will go from 2 to 4. Eighth grade will stay at 2, and then ninth grade will have 1, and 10th grade will have 1. We do have enough applicants to have a second ninth grade class, but logistically, space-wise, is particularly in some spaces we're looking at acquiring, we would only have 4 classrooms. And so, and in order to have that second ninth grade class, it would have to be about half the students being new, which is culture-wise really hard to have half the students, that high percent. So at this point, we're holding off and saying, even though when we talked about high school, it would be a lot better with 2 sections than 1, a combination of those 2 things, we're thinking may be really better to wait until this 6th grade group, which has 4 sections coming through, gets to 9th grade, where now you can get to 2 or 3 sections with predominantly returning students, culture-wise.
Yep.
So that's kind of where that's at, and space-wise right now, it's an issue too if we were to add another one beginning next year. That all make sense? But again, some of those pieces are moving, and we will adjust as the enrollments come in, and as we find out students are not coming back, and there could be a shift here or there, but that's what we're building our staffing on, that's what we're hiring teachers on. We've started interviews this week, did a bunch of interviews this week, have a bunch of interviews scheduled next week. I went to 3 job fairs this week, going to 2 next week. Ben is getting up here, he was doing a bunch of online interviews, which I can't wait to hear about, up until now. And so far it's going well, and the efforts we're putting in, I think we're doing well.
Keeping with 1 ninth grade class next year allows us to keep all the 8th graders who want to return, right?
It appears so.
Okay.
That's another piece.
Unless they change their mind.
Well, it's really tricky because the group going into 9th grade is, let me just give you the exact number that I'm right here. And this is where it's really tricky. It's, wait, that's the wrong one. Well, the intent to return is right in the board packet. Let's go back to that intent to return in the board packet here. In the
I have
superintendent's
it
report.
for, it's 21 said they're coming, 15 said no, and then 15 are still undecided.
Right, so historically, the number that actually return is, if you figured the yes usually matches, the final number usually matches the yeses. With a more, but maybe of the 21 that say they're coming, 5 or 6 of them actually decide not to, but then of the undecided, 5 or 6 stay. It doesn't appear that we'd be over 24, but with that many undecided and it being that new, we don't think it's going to be a problem. If it is, we'll have to adjust, right? And if we end up with 28 or something, or 30 in a class, then we'll have to hire a para to be in the class, a second teacher or something, or we'll have to do something creative to make it work. But based on the data from this year, the 1 year of data we have, last year we had 38 in 8th grade and 14 stayed. Right, so with that data, if you looked at that out of 51, we have plenty of room. How many more are gonna stay next year? Only information we have to use is this. Typically, in other grades, the historical data is much more accurate than the intent to return, and how many actually come back. When you look at the previous 3 years, what percentage have returned going into that grade, that's usually been a lot more accurate measure than what we see on the intent to return. And so, we're using the intent to return to get a little bit, but I'd say that grade and 6th grade are the 2 grades that are really, we're making our best educated guesses that we can make and trying to figure out how to make it work. And there could be a problem in that way that, all of a sudden we have 30 that end up staying, and now what do we do?
But anyone new is automatically waitlisted, right? For
Anybody, yes.
right now.
So, yes, and we have to assume until we have a records request,
That they're all, sure.
that they have the right to return until we have a records request. Even though they told us no, we can't assume they're a no until we have a records request. And if they change their mind, we have to have them stay. Yes, Greg.
I'm just assuming that because we're not a full-out 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade school, that accounts for a percentage at least of the people who say no after 8th grade, because they want their kids to go somewhere where they know they'll be there for 3 years. Would that be part of it?
Well, they know we're planning to have their kids be able to stay.
Mhm.
When we're as new as we are, people are leery of something new,
Right.
one. Two, as small as we are, we don't have all the opportunities developed yet.
Right.
Right? People right now are trading small and that are comfortable here and feel like they're learning well here for, hey, we don't have nearly as many extracurricular opportunities, many different elective classes yet.
Yes.
Right? And so that's gonna be a trade-off until we build it up. And, you know, once we get all the grades, and now we're coming from 4 or 5 sections of 8th grade going into it, and you can get to 2 or 3, we'll be able to offer so many more things at that point, that right now it's, you know, it's attractive for some families. There's a lot of advantages to being small, but there's a lot of things that we're not able to offer yet that we will be. And I think that really counts for it. And we just haven't proved it yet. We haven't established it as new. They know our elementary school is good. They know our middle school is good at this point. They don't know what the high school is gonna be yet. And we have to establish that.
Right.
Also, maybe there's some families that aren't sure that their kids could fit into the scope of things. Maybe they don't want their kids to be PSEO 11th, 12th grade.
Mhm.
Maybe they would rather them be in a brick and mortar school. So then maybe that doesn't fall into line with what they want. their kids to
Yes,
do.
and we know that's, you know, and that's what we're trying to balance, is how do we meet the needs of, and be something that everybody, works for everybody. When you're so small, it's just hard to do, and we have to find our niche and who we are and what our high school is gonna be, and that's a work in progress. I mean, you're not gonna get there in 1 year, starting with the pilot class of 24. That's gonna take some time. We'll get there, but it's gonna take some time.
It's exciting nonetheless.
Mhm.
Very exciting.
Mhm.
Especially the part about 10th graders driving up on the parking
Oh,
lot.
that's- You think the city of Woodbury is worried now about safety out there? We got some work to do and figure that out.
Fill in the pond.
Yeah, filling the block.
So this will come for vote next month, but if you look closer at it and have questions, ask me. If you have suggestions, you know, and then we may tweak it a little bit based on the enrollment as it comes in and you know, some of the, whatever new information we have between now and then, but it shouldn't change a lot. We feel like we have a pretty solid plan, and at least to start with. And of course, your preliminary budget's just, it's a guide. It's gonna change. There's too many moving parts. You don't know where your enrollment's gonna end up. You don't know exactly the teachers you wanna hire, how much they're each gonna make exactly, because they're different places with experience and so on and so forth. And so, you know, it's a guide, and provides a roadmap, but you're gonna change it as conditions on the ground change as well.
All right. Do we want to circle back to Ben, or just keep going and I can hit stuff during calls? Oh, perfect, okay. Moving on to our expansion items.
You can't say any words, we follow the agenda, I guess, but.
Would you like to speak it up? You were on the agenda, but accidentally, so,
Yeah,
okay. You're good?
How are things going in activities? What's new in activities? That's what
Yeah.
your activities.
Activities update.
Yeah, so in spring, we're launching a couple different opportunities. So we're bringing back Ultimate Frisbee in the spring. That's gonna be open for 5th through 8th grade students, co-rec. There's an opportunity on the 4th of March after school for anybody, any grade level, to get a little bit of a better understanding of what Ultimate Frisbee is. Our coach is going to come and lead a tutorial inside the gym. So that's gone out to all of our families in a flyer. We're trying to launch 6th through 9th grade boys baseball. So we have a number of boys that have signed up for that, not yet enough for a full team. So we're still kind of talking to those gentlemen to see what we can figure out for that. We are trying to launch girls softball 6 through 9. We are still in talks with Nova Classical Academy to figure out if we want to do a co-op with them for girls softball. And then an exciting one is for grades 6 through 8. there is a co-rec flag football league that we are going to be a part of, where we get to play against other local charter schools.
Nice.
For our younger kiddos, we are having K through 2, we're having a golf clinic come in here to kind of teach the basics of golf, as well as a pickleball clinic coming in to teach kind of the basics of pickleball. So what we've heard a lot of is that we've had build up really nice kind of for our middle and high school students, and we know that that's a big focus right now, but giving some offerings for some of our younger students, so that's going to be an option. That's going to be coming up in spring, so we're really excited about those. We finalized talks with the city of Woodbury to relook at kind of our use agreement, and through that, we have now come to terms of them maintaining and doing all the work on our play field out there, as well as giving us access to baseball, softball, and tennis courts. Baseball and softball fields and tennis courts after school to match the kind of usage of them utilizing our facility, as well as pushing back kind of their start time for their use, because as we found, it's kind of difficult to get some of our games in if they're starting as early as they do for some of their activities. So a lot of really kind of cool stuff, a lot of fun stuff on the horizon. Thanks if you came out to any of the girls' basketball games, those were a lot of fun. And we just kind of finished up their season. They had their party today to kind of end up and wrap up their season. So boys and girls basketball is complete, and now we're getting ready for the fall season. And archery, we may have some good archers that are going to regional and state tournaments. So we're pretty excited about that. I think Ms. Squirtle, you're pretty excited about that too.
Yes,
Cool.
but it's the season that never ends.
Yes. Okay, so that's what I have for an update. Thank you for letting me speak a little bit.
Yeah, of course. All right, moving on to the expansion documents, which is like reading another language.
So basically what you need to know about this is just a preliminary step we need to take in the event things work out for us to explore bonding for additional facilities. We need to have a resolution passed saying that we can be reimbursed for the school and from our affiliated building company. It doesn't obligate us to anything, but it allows us to pursue things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. All right. We'll keep on.
A motion, you have a motion to
Do
approve.
we need to vote on that?
Yeah, they should have been under action items, actually. I didn't catch that.
My bad.
That's okay.
Didn't realize it was that.
Yeah, we have to actually do a motion and vote on those.
Okay.
You could probably take them together as one motion if you want.
Make a motion to approve the ABC reimbursement resolution and the reimbursement resolution for schools.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second. Any further conversation around that? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Consent agenda items are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. Consent agenda items are as follows: approval of the January 23rd, 2025 meeting minutes and approval of the February personnel update. Cassidy, will you do a roll call vote?
Mike Blunt,
Aye.
Colleen Lautenbach,
Aye.
Allison Pitt,
Aye.
Shelby Poole,
Aye.
Greg Sand,
Aye.
Kylie Sherrill,
Aye.
Jolene Squirtle,
Aye.
Joe Valentine.
Aye.
So moved. Approving the transportation boundaries. Action item 9.1. Beautiful picture with clear boundaries. I know Jonas kind of presented it to us at the last meeting.
This map is a lot easier to understand.
Much easier. Very, very well done.
Maybe not exact, but it's
Yeah.
very close.
Now I know
Yeah.
how huge it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
On the east, is that where we already stop, just past Woodbury
Oh,
Drive?
good question. Let me pull it up here again. On the east, south of 94, it's the same. We're expanding on the east, north of 94 to include part of Lake Elmo. That's the only change from what it currently is.
I just didn't know if we went further into dancing waters or any of that, so as long as we include what's already.
You know, so it's the same as what it is what we've done, without having necessarily a policy approved for it, or clearly defining, but the only exception is we included the closer part of Lake Elmo, which is, you know, it's kind of silly. Basically, it was not included before because it's Stillwater School District, and they basically were only doing Woodbury, or South Wash and North St. Paul school districts. But some of those houses and new developments there are 2 minutes away. We're busing 25 minutes away or something down south, and we were not
Right.
busing the ones that are 2-3 minutes away. Didn't really make sense. And of course, there's not very many families there right now, but part of the reason we haven't had very many families is likely because we haven't had transportation there. So it may take time to build that up, but you build up closer to the school and it's easier to retain students and so on and so forth. So it's just that slight adjustment to what we've been doing, but we've never had it really approved as boundaries with the board. And this clarifies it for Cassidy, where now, when she's doing tours with families or taking calls, and they're wondering if they can get transportation, she can kind of look at a map if she doesn't know what the family's saying about where they are, and say, well, where are you on this map? And they can figure it out together, and so on and so forth. So.
I like it. All right, so I would make a motion to approve the transportation boundaries.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversation? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Board communication and future items. We're going to move into closed session at the end of the meeting to talk about our growth opportunities. I don't really have much. Nothing's really come up in the past month. So moving on to the fact that our next meeting will be held here Thursday, March 27th, 2025 at 5:30. And if nobody has anything else, I will make a motion to adjourn our regular meeting.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We want to take